Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Sandy Smith, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Jed Goggin. We warmly welcome the family of Private Peter Maclean, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Captain Brendan O'Hara, Captain HMAS Canberra 3, Royal Australian Navy, accompanied by Chief Warrant Officer Kevin Harris and the officers and the crew of HMAS Canberra 3. We also warmly welcome Mr. Des Jones, veteran of the Second World War, who was a member of the crew of HMAS Canberra 1. Sir, we thank you for your service. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you can do so, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Peter Maclean. Peter Maclean was born in 1878 in the village of Crowlister on the Isle of Lewis in the remote Outer Hebrides of Scotland. He was the second youngest son of 9 children born to Peter and Jane Maclean. Little is known of Peter's early life. After finishing at the local public school, Peter Maclean joined the Seaforth Highlanders, an infantry regiment associated with the Highlands of Scotland. As part of the 3rd Militia Battalion, Maclean embarked from Scotland in February 1900 and was stationed in Egypt for garrison duty during the end of the South African War. Maclean spent 6 years serving with the Seaforth Highlanders and was followed into service by his youngest brother, Roderick. In 1911, Maclean decided to leave Scotland and emigrate to Australia. He arrived in Western Australia later that year and found work as a miner in Kalgoorlie. Peter Maclean enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 16th of February 1916 at Black Boy Hill Camp. He was assigned to the 20th Reinforcements of the 16th Australian Infantry Battalion with the rank of private in March. Maclean remained training at Black Boy Hill for most of 1916. He left Fremantle in HMAT Suffolk on the 13th of October 1916, bound for the United Kingdom. He arrived in Plymouth in December and continued training at Lark Hill Camp. Over Christmas, he was able to take leave to travel to Paisley in Scotland to visit his oldest brother, Kenneth, and his wife. He returned to camp shortly afterwards and left England for France in the Princess Victoria on the 16th of January 1917. Maclean marched into the 4th Australian Divisional Base Depot at Atapila before joining the 16th Battalion at Metz on the 21st of January. The battalion spent most of January there. Throughout February and March, the 16th alternated between frontline service around Fleur and work behind the lines. By the end of March, the battalion was preparing for open warfare. In early April, the battalion moved to near Bapaume in preparation for a planned attack on the Hindenburg Line near the village of Bullecourt. General Gough decided to employ a dozen tanks to lead the troops through the enemy's barbed wire. The attack was postponed when it became clear the tanks would not arrive at their starting points in time. On the night of the 10th of April, Maclean met his youngest brother, Roderick, who had been fighting with the British forces around the nearby Arras. The brothers agreed to meet again after the battle the following day, but it was the last time they would see each other. At 2:15 a.m. on the 11th of April, the men of the 16th Battalion moved into their jumping-off positions in Sunken Road and were all ready to attack by 3:30 a.m. The first 3 tanks moved out at 4:30, followed 15 minutes later by infantry. Only halfway to the first objective, 2 of the tanks stopped and opened fire on the enemy, thus giving away the positions of the infantry and almost telling the enemy that an attack was in progress. The infantry decided to push forwards without the tanks. The battle was a disaster. Although the 16th Battalion managed to reach their first objectives, they were exposed to heavy machine gun fire and artillery shelling. With the tanks either too far from the objectives or quickly put out of action by the enemy, the men were forced to retreat back to their own lines. The First Battle of Bullecourt cost the Australians 3,000 casualties. One of these casualties was Private Peter Maclean, who was killed in action on the 11th of April 1917. He was 39 years old. After the battle, his brother Roderick spent the night searching field hospitals and casualty clearing stations for his missing brother without success. After news of Peter's death reached his family back in Scotland, the family came together to share in their grief and sorrow. Kenneth's wife wrote to his sister Annie that words cannot express our deep sorrow in the loss of a noble and dear brother. I have no brother of my own, but I always looked upon your brothers as my own. Peter Maclean's body was never recovered from the battlefield. His final resting place remains unknown. He's commemorated on the Villiers-Bretonneux Memorial alongside the names of over 10,000 Australians who were killed in France and who have no known grave. Peter Maclean's name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Peter Maclean, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.